We are EDI. Can you hear me? Yes. So, let's start. Welcome to the second edition of EDI Global Forum. Today, we are a community of people from over 100 institutions, representing 30 countries and 5 continents. From Colombia to Uganda, from South Korea to Singapore, Australia to the United States, and spanning Japan, England, and Europe. Thank you, everyone, for accepting our invitation to join us here in Naples. And thank you to the Campania region for their invaluable support in making this possible. Today, we will get directly into the core topics of EDI, Museum as Actor of Social Change. I'm pleased to introduce and express our gratitude to the EDI Scientific Committee, which has supported and shaped the entire process of defining this year's themes and program, and of which I'm honored to be a member. Maria Caso, Head of Education Department at the Museo Reina Sofia. Fatima Bintu Rasul, Director of Public Program of Raw Material Company in Dakar. Ellen Charman, Director of Learning, National Programs, and Young Victoria and Albert at the Victoria and Albert Museum. And Emma Ariadi Herman, Head of Education and Inclusion at the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam. And finally, Nisa Mecking, Deputy Director, Learning and Engagement at the MoMA. Thank you very much. And thank you to the EDI team managed by Francesca Cocco that made all this possible. And now, I would like to invite Maurizio Morra Greco, President of Morra Greco Foundation, to talk about how today is not only possible, but essential to think about museums' social role. Maurizio, you have the floor.
Thank you to everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to the Morra Greco Foundation and introduce the second edition of EDI. A project that we are at Morra Greco Foundation consider pivotal to our mission. We intend to contribute more and more to giving value to the backbone of the museum structures, which are the operators in the educational sector, prominent and indispensable figures who deserve ever increasing recognition and consideration. This aim is so dear to us that we as a foundation invest more than 70% of our budget to support this initiative. We strive to make the EDI Global Forum home to cultural operation in education, a place of meeting and discussion. I hope that the program we have planned will give you some interesting food of thought. Allow me to thank the Campania region for supporting this project. Therefore, I wish you a good job and a happy stay in Naples. Thank you.
And now I invite Almerina Bove, Chief of Staff of Campania Region, to talk to us.
Grazie. I'm sorry, but I will tell you in Italian language, so I hope that you can have translation. Thanks. Buongiorno a tutti, sono Almerina Bove, capo di gabinetto del Presidente della Regione Campania. E sono felice di darvi il benvenuto insieme con Maurizio Morra Greco, il Presidente della Fondazione, alla seconda edizione di EDI Global Forum, un'iniziativa che la Regione Campania, come si diceva prima, ha patrocinato e supportato ed è orgogliosa di patrocinare e supportare. La Regione Campania, come territorio, inteso come territorio, è noto a tutti, ha grandi ricchezze paesaggistiche, architettoniche, culturali. Napoli è una città intrisa di storia, di cultura, di bellezza. Non da ora, ma da secoli è luogo di incontri culturali, è luogo di accoglienza, di inclusione. Dunque iniziative culturali hanno il loro contesto ideale in Napoli e nella Regione Campania. E tante sono le iniziative culturali che qui si realizzano, anche attraverso l'impegno delle amministrazioni pubbliche che operano sul territorio. Ma EDI Global Forum ha, secondo noi, qualcosa di più e qualcosa di diverso dalle tante meritevoli iniziative culturali che si svolgono in Campania. E questo quid in più che EDI Global Forum ha, e di questo dobbiamo tutti ringraziare Maurizio Morra Greco, e pubblicamente lo ringrazio per questo, ha una portata internazionale, ha degli ospiti che esprimono competenze di eccellenza a livello mondiale, ha un format che è innovativo e sul nostro territorio costituisce un unicum e ha dei contenuti assolutamente importanti e rilevanti, perché voler condividere una riflessione che non sia meramente individuale ma appunto collettiva, condivisa, è un'esperienza culturale ed educativa importantissima. Fare educazione e istruzione attraverso l'arte, facendo interagire realtà di livello mondiale con gli enti culturali pubblici e privati che operano sul territorio, è un'esperienza assolutamente indispensabile, tanto più nei tempi che viviamo, nei quali lo scontro di ideologie, dietro lo scontro di ideologie si mascherano conflitti e nascono conflitti, laddove invece uno scambio franco, sincero, svolto con onestà intellettuale è certamente momento di ricchezza, di arricchimento individuale e collettivo. E per questo motivo la Regione Campania supporta dall'anno scorso EDI Global Forum e certamente ne farà un'iniziativa strutturale, cioè destinata a radicarsi sempre più sul territorio, ad irradiarsi da questo nelle periferie. Ieri siete stati in una delle tante periferie della nostra regione, ma ad irradiarsi altresì a livello nazionale ed internazionale. E proprio la settimana scorsa noi come amministrazione regionale eravamo al Dipartimento per la Coesione a discutere di investimenti pubblici, in particolare del Fondo Sviluppo e Coesione, e laddove ci è stato chiesto di improntare a maggiore concretezza gli interventi, le linee di azione proposti, ci chiedevano di individuare degli interventi infrastrutturali, degli investimenti. Noi abbiamo con decisione sostenuto un'idea della quale siamo convinti, e cioè che si può e si deve investire non soltanto in infrastrutture immateriali, ma nella educazione, nell'istruzione, nella formazione della coscienza individuale e collettiva. E EDI Global Forum si colloca perfettamente, in piena coerenza, in questo profilo programmatico che l'amministrazione intende perseguire. Da ultimo ho guardato il programma, purtroppo non potrò restare per tutti i lavori, ma confido nelle pubblicazioni, nei report che poi avremo per poter avere un momento di crescita a nostra volta. Il programma è estremamente interessante, intanto si parla di idee scintillanti, quindi auguro davvero che possano, e confido che sarà così, possano scaturire dal confronto di questi giorni delle idee scintillanti da portare sul nostro territorio, sul come far evolvere i nostri musei, le realtà culturali più ampie, come fare museo secondo un approccio democratico. E ho visto anche che parlerete di metaverso. Noi come amministrazione pubblica e come giuristi siamo impegnati non ancora sul tema del metaverso, ma sul tema dell'intelligenza artificiale e di quali siano le condizioni di ammissibilità e i limiti del ricorso doveroso per certi aspetti da parte della pubblica amministrazione alle più moderne forme di tecnologia. Ma sentir parlare in un'iniziativa che mira alla educazione, all'istruzione, alla formazione attraverso l'arte di Metaverse, cioè di una forma che a noi profani, di una forma di tecnologia che evoca esperienze solitarie, individuali, e invece sentirne parlare in questo contesto e quindi magari scoprendone degli sviluppi che possono essere per la moltiplicazione dell'esperienza emotiva ed umana e quindi di arricchimento al dialogo e quindi alla crescita sociale, certamente è una delle piccole gemme che troviamo nel programma di EDI Global Forum. Concludo perché appunto non voglio sottrarre tempo ai relatori che interverranno, ribadendo, consentitemelo, i ringraziamenti e il più grande apprezzamento nei confronti di Maurizio Morra Greco e della Fondazione Morra Greco per questa iniziativa e augurando ovviamente buon lavoro ai partecipanti e un'ottima riuscita della iniziativa. Grazie.
And now, through the EDI Inspiring session, we will closely examine the central themes of this edition: well-being and justice, digital transformation, and responding to the climate crisis. The new ICOM definition, approved in Praga 1 year ago, encompasses all these challenges, and according to its latest guidelines, the role of future of museums are closely linked to a broader context that include contemporary issues: fighting inequalities and social injustice, regenerating the connective tissues of society, promoting decolonization, and combating racism and sexism. While significant progress has been made in many cases, with a growing number of best practices observed in cultural institutions worldwide, and you are here as representing all this, there is still much to accomplish and share. And this is especially important because to be relevant in the future, every current action should interpret and present and anticipate new trends. For this reason, networks become as crucial as invaluable tools in achieving this goal. We are pleased to have Michele Lanzinger, President of ICOM Italy and Director of Muse, the Science Museum of Trento, opening this second edition of EDI Global Forum. Unfortunately, due to a last-minute unforeseen event, he could not join us in Naples today, but he is remotely connected with us from Trento. Ciao Michele, buongiorno, benvenuto.
Alessandra, grazie davvero. Good morning to everybody, buongiorno a tutti. Many thanks to the Foundation Morra and Dr. Maurizio Morra Greco for the opportunity to bring greetings as President of ICOM Italy to this extraordinary conference. We consider EDI as a very relevant, already annual and international appointment to be considered as a fundamental source of renovated critical thinking on education museums. The subject of this morning, educating and experiencing museums as actors of social change, is of the utmost importance for the contemporary museology. All of us already know, only a few words, the basic keywords of education museums: public engagement. Museums are increasingly becoming educational, public, and open hubs, offering a diverse range of programs and exhibits that engage the public. Cultural preservation, for educating visitors about the history and heritage of different cultures. Interdisciplinary learning, museum integrators integrate various subjects, making it possible for visitors to learn in an interconnected way. Sixth, specialized knowledge. Museum provides us to experts and the specialized knowledge. Technology innovation. Contemporary museums often incorporate technology to enhance education. Interactive displays, virtual reality, and augmented reality experiences offer innovative ways to learn. Metaverse and AI is a complete new chapter to be discussed. Critical thinking. Museums encourage critical thinking and analysis. Community engagement. Community should be focal point for community engagement and discussion on important social issues, serving as platforms for learning and dialogue. The new definition of museums is on lifelong learning, curriculum support, research and scholarship. In summary, education is integral to contemporary museums, transforming them from passive repositories of artifacts to dynamic centers of learning, culture, and community engagement. But it's time to go further. Contemporary subjects as those of well represented in the document on sustainability and the implementation of Agenda 2030, transforming our world, or going back as ICOM to our common ground with UNESCO in 1946, the still endangered value of peace among the people, the goal number 16 of the agenda is on that, are altogether contemporary new commitments for museums of all types. Going to the conclusion. As ICOM Italy, I would like to invite all of you, colleagues and professionals in the museum matters, to participate to our activities. An interesting possibility could be to participate to the permanent workshop on education and the many other workshops on about the social commitment of museums. As ICOM, we are very interested to develop further the collaboration with the Morra Foundation in order to collaborate in our effort to sustain the role of museums within our society. For both the proposals, I am ready and open to dialogue with all. Dear Dr. Morra, dear Alessandra Drioli, dear colleagues, I wish you have interesting and fruitful days in Naples. All the best. Cari saluti.
Thank you very much, Michele, to Michele Lanzinger. And for sure, Fondazione Morra Greco will be very happy to join all the group of ICOM that take care of research and on education. And with Michele Lanzinger, we will pass now to the speaker of our inspiring session. So I invite Brad Irwin, Peggy Brandon, and Giovanni Nicolini to join us here. And thank you to Maurizio Morra Greco and Almerina Bove. So with Almerina Bove, we spoke of Metaverse, and we will start exactly speaking of digital transformation. Digital technologies present vast opportunities for making cultural institutions more relevant and widely accessible. The pace of the developments in this field is so rapid that keeping up can be challenging. What technologies should be in your institution, and what is considered to investing in? What quick wins and best practices can you implement right away? And how do your current potential audience members prefer to engage with arts and culture online? What are the potential future directions for digital innovation within the cultural and artistic spheres? What will the next generation of digital humanists look like? EDI aims to contribute to their development by expanding the scope and fostering critical thinking in this ongoing transformation. We have invited Massimiliano Nicolini to share the story of Olimaint and the research it carries on. Massimiliano Nicolini serves as Director of the Research and Development Department of Olimaint. He is an information science researcher with a specialization in VRO, the technology behind the Metaverse, and artificial intelligence. Additionally, he is an Italian representative in the Metaverse Standards Forum, an organization dedicated to advancing interoperability standards for a more open and inclusive Metaverse. Olimaint is an IT foundation established in 1981 by Giovanni Nicolini the professional son of one of Italy's most enlightened industrialists, Adriano Olivetti. Over to you, Massimiliano.
Grazie, buongiorno a tutti. Ringrazio il Presidente della Fondazione per questo invito che abbiamo accettato volentieri, sia io sia i colleghi che mi hanno accompagnato. Faremo un po' un viaggio molto rapido in quello che è la storia della tecnologia e scopriremo insieme che in realtà questo mondo moderno di oggi sostanzialmente parla quasi completamente italiano. Ecco perché ho deciso di fare questo intervento nella lingua che è la lingua madre di tutte le tecnologie, che è l'italiano. Non ce ne vogliono i colleghi d'oltreoceano, ma questa è storia che fa parte della storia dell'umanità. Vediamo. Da dove proveniamo noi, quindi la Fondazione, il laboratorio nel quale io e i miei colleghi operiamo, è nato il primo personal computer mai costruito al mondo. Tutti quanti voi normalmente utilizzate videochiamate, chi non le utilizza al giorno d'oggi? Ma nessuno sa che l'invenzione delle videochiamate è stata fatta nei laboratori di Olivetti ed è stata fatta da Giorgio Coraluppi, un collega recentemente scomparso. Ci ha salvato nel Covid. Se Giorgio non avesse inventato l'algoritmo delle videochiamate, oggi noi sostanzialmente avremmo vissuto un Covid molto più drammatico e ve lo posso assicurare, visto che io vengo da Brescia, che è stata una delle città più colpite d'Italia. Nel 1994 Giovanni Nicolini scrive il sistema operativo XPL-VRO, che è il sistema operativo e le istruzioni che stanno alla base di tutte le moderne applicazioni che vengono chiamate di metaverso, anche se scopriremo che di per sé il metaverso di fatto non esiste. Questo sono io, testimone oculare del primo telefono cellulare smartphone mai realizzato al mondo, era il 2001 e questo si chiamava Pronto. Faccio solo presente che Apple arrivò 6 anni dopo. Non era così bello, non era così colorato, però funzionava molto bene. E questo è uno strumento che tutti quanti voi avete sicuramente avuto nelle vostre case e nei vostri uffici, che è la stampante a getto di inchiostro, inventata dai nostri colleghi del distaccamento IJET che stava ad Aosta, in Val d'Aosta. Questo per dare un po' l'idea che la ricerca italiana nella tecnologia in realtà è poi, diciamo, si è distribuita un po' in tutto il mondo e quindi è alla base della gran parte delle tecnologie che oggi ci stanno portando verso quello che è chiamato il Web 3, cioè quel mondo che nel 2030 ci porterà sostanzialmente ad avere un cambiamento sostanziale nell'utilizzo della tecnologia di oggi. La nostra fondazione per il secondo anno consecutivo è stata inserita dal WMS tra le 100 realtà fautori del cambiamento globale. E siamo parte ovviamente di quel gruppo ristretto di ricercatori che scrive e determina le regole e i protocolli di programmazione con cui tutti quanti realizzano e creano applicazioni per la realtà immersiva. Abbiamo creato alcuni dei brevetti e dei protocolli che troverete sempre più sulla vostra strada. In particolar modo mi soffermo un attimo sul primo, HBA, Human Biometric Avatar. Spesso e volentieri siamo abituati a pensare all'avatar come un pupazzetto che utilizziamo in un videogame. In realtà l'avatar, che è un termine di antica memoria, non è un pupazzetto che utilizziamo nei videogame, quella è la sua skin, la sua veste. L'avatar è l'algoritmo che ci identifica. E noi che cosa abbiamo fatto? Abbiamo ricostruito, intorno a questo protocollo, l'identificativo unico dell'individuo. L'avatar biometrico è l'account che dal 2030 tutti quanti noi ci troveremo ad utilizzare per accedere a internet. Sarà disintermediato, quindi noi in Italia stiamo vivendo il passaggio da SPID che sta per chiudere, stiamo passando alla carta d'identità elettronica, ma nel 2030 avverrà un passaggio sostanzialmente stravolgente dal punto di vista della tecnologia. Arriviamo dal mondo del 4G, ci sembrava di aver avuto un passaggio tecnologico eccezionale. Poi è arrivato qualcuno che ci ha detto che potevamo utilizzare il 5G, 100 gigabyte al secondo. Caspita, è una cosa meravigliosa, possiamo vedere i film, possiamo vedere cose fantastiche. Ma nel 2030, esattamente il 6 giugno del 2030, la rete 5G globale si spegnerà ed entreremo nella rete 6G, che ci permetterà di far transitare 10 terabyte per secondo. Questo cosa significa? Per chi non è addetto ai lavori significa un numero come un altro, per chi utilizza la tecnologia per guardare una partita di calcio o un film vuol dire che lo vedrà molto meglio, ma significa che quello che avete in tasca tutti voi oggi, cioè il telefono cellulare, smetterà di esistere e diventerà un po' come il Sirio che oggi ricordiamo in casa perché lo usavamo per mettere la sveglia quando eravamo più giovani, o i servizi di richiama che si utilizzavano tempo fa, un oggetto storico di archeologia tecnologica, perché tutta quanta la tecnologia dal 2030 in avanti avrà due denominatori comuni: architettura distribuita e apparecchiature di tipo ottico che noi utilizzeremo. I colleghi poi che saranno qui in questi 3 giorni saranno anche a disposizione per farvi fare un salto in avanti di 6 anni e farvi vedere come utilizzeremo la tecnologia. Badate bene, il metaverso non è qualche cosa che è stato inventato adesso. Nel laboratorio Olivetti nasce nel 94, è abbastanza vecchio il metaverso, è sempre esistito, nasceva per la sanità militare nel 1994. Le prime applicazioni fatte, chiamiamole così, come piace a livello di pubblicità chiamarlo metaverso, il cui vero nome tecnico-scientifico è VRO, erano per la sanità militare, per aiutare un medico in uno scenario operativo ad avere dei medici che se ne stavano negli ospedali italiani, ad aiutarlo avendo visualizzata la situazione reale nella quale lui si trovava. Oggi possiamo fare molto di più. Oggi la tecnologia della VRO, del metaverso, quello vero, e questa scheda vi farà capire una cosa: oggi l'80 e quasi il 90% di ciò che si vede pubblicizzato e promosso a livello globale non ha niente a che vedere con questa tecnologia. Sono dei mondi 3D carini, molto belli, ma fare un mondo 3D non vuol dire fare un'applicazione di realtà immersiva su architettura distribuita. Che cos'è l'architettura distribuita? Faccio un esempio banale. Tutti avete WhatsApp. Se qualcuno oggi va a Menlo Park e spegne quel grande interruttore che dà la corrente al server di WhatsApp, voi non mandate un messaggio neanche al vostro vicino di seduta. Questo non accade nell'architettura distribuita. Vengono chiamate Highlander Application, applicazioni immortali. Sono applicazioni dove fino a che nel mondo solo 2 device saranno collegati tra di loro, l'applicazione che voi avete scritto funzionerà. E importantissima secondo me, anche è molto visionario l'invito da parte della Fondazione a noi per parlare qui, per il fatto che la base fondamentale della tecnologia è educare le persone a utilizzarla, a saperla conoscere, a saperla utilizzare, ma soprattutto a saperla costruire. Oggi noi siamo degli utenti prodotto. Io faccio sempre un esempio un po' nostrano, ma che rende l'idea. Noi oggi siamo, col mondo del Web 2, come quel contadino che tutto il giorno raccoglie patate, che è un lavoro pesante. Per chi ha lavorato in agricoltura è un lavoro pesante, le patate stanno in terra, si fa fatica a raccoglierle. Riempie un camion di patate, quindi il suo bel furgoncino di patate, le riempie, tutto il giorno ha lavorato, è distrutto, è il frutto del suo lavoro, va e le consegna al primo supermercato che incontra e gliele regala. Poi va a casa, giustamente arriva a casa, stanco della giornata, ha caricato e scaricato tonnellate di patate a mano e va dalla moglie e chiede alla moglie di mangiare un pollo con le patate, ma non delle patate qualsiasi, quelle che vende quel supermercato. Oggi voi state facendo la stessa cosa, noi stiamo facendo la stessa cosa con la nostra vita digitale. Oggi noi vendiamo la nostra vita digitale agli operatori del mondo sociale, ma non solo, che in cambio che cosa vi danno? Vi danno la possibilità di spiare cosa fa la vostra amica col nuovo fidanzato, ma allo stesso tempo vi rubano tutte le informazioni, anche quelle più riservate. Non credo che in questa sala esista una persona che abbia letto il disclaimer di TikTok, di Instagram, di Facebook. Prima accedo, prima meglio è. Accetto qualsiasi cosa che mi viene detta. Però in quel qualsiasi cosa che mi viene detto io do informazioni estremamente sensibili che domani mattina, oggi siamo insieme a paesi amici, ma domani mattina se chi ha questi dati non è più un paese amico, sa perfettamente ogni cittadino del nostro e del vostro paese dov'è, cosa fa e quali abitudini ha. E non ci metterà molto a utilizzare queste informazioni, non tanto per farci divertire con dei balletti, ma in altro modo. Come conosco le informazioni sanitarie delle persone, come conosco qualsiasi pensiero che una persona fa. Ecco, oggi questo è il Web 2. Qual è la sfida del Web 3 e del mondo nel quale entriamo noi? È regolata da queste 8 leggi. L'MSF ha stabilito 8 leggi e l'ultima nasce su proposta della nostra fondazione, del nostro laboratorio 2 anni fa, perché certifica, e sono raggruppate circa 3.000 imprese mondiali, tra le più importanti al mondo, compreso anche Meta, compreso Google, compreso aziende, tra virgolette, che tutti conosciamo, e ci dice queste semplici 8 cose. 1, io ho messo la parola metaverso per renderlo comprensibile, ne esiste uno solo, non ce ne sono tanti. È per tutti, non è per un paese sì e per un paese no. Perché è per tutti? Perché il 6G funzionerà prevalentemente via satellite. Quindi se noi domani mattina andremo in Congo Brazzaville avremo 300 Mbps in download, tanto quanto ce l'abbiamo qui in questo splendido palazzo della Fondazione. Annulla il digital divide completamente. Nessuno lo controlla, ecco perché c'è stata una guerra che è durata 4 anni nell'MSF, perché avere il controllo del Web 3 e avere il controllo dell'avatar biometrico significa avere il controllo assoluto su tutto ciò che accade a livello mondiale. E l'avatar biometrico fa una cosa importante, non dà i dati a qualcuno, ma detiene i dati dentro di sé. Ecco perché 2 giorni fa abbiamo presentato al Forum della Salute, noi facciamo parte del Comitato dei Grandi Ospedali Italiani, la nuova modalità di erogazione del servizio di cartella clinica, non più all'interno di un server centrale che può essere colpito, attaccato, hackerato, si può spegnere, può essere rubato, un malfunzionamento, ma ognuno fa come faceva mio padre, portava le cartellette dal medico della mutua per fargli vedere che cosa aveva fatto, perché oggi noi abbiamo, se io da Brescia faccio vado al pronto soccorso del Cardarelli, probabilmente non sanno nemmeno chi sono. Domani saremo noi che porteremo i dati. Abbiamo lavorato col garante, abbiamo un bellissimo dipartimento all'interno del Cardarelli. Qualcuno mi diceva prima, voi nessuno sa quello che avete fatto, siamo un po' dappertutto. Abbiamo al Cardarelli di Napoli abbiamo il miglior centro al mondo di medicina robotica immersiva che sia mai esistito e vengono da tutto il mondo a imparare a operare con i robot che noi comandiamo a distanza. E si fa qua a 5 minuti di strada da voi. Il metaverso è aperto, interoperabile, io con il mio avatar posso andare dappertutto, non sono obbligato a registrare 3.000 account che servono solo a qualcuno per avere i miei dati o in alcuni casi anche i miei soldi. Quinto, il metaverso è indipendente dall'hardware, una vera applicazione di metaverso deve poter funzionare contemporaneamente su uno smartphone, su un laptop, su un visore, ma su tutti i tipi di visore che esistono. Se voi guardate un po' le notizie su questa tecnologia vi renderete conto che oggi tutti costruiscono visori. Noi siamo abituati a sentirne 2, Oculus e Vision Pro, perché sono quelli che fanno pubblicità, ma Huawei fa visori, HP da anni fa visori, HTC fa visori, noi abbiamo progettato visori, tutti stanno costruendo visori, perché? Perché il telefonino sarà sostituito da degli occhiali. Oggi ci sembra qualcosa di stravolgente. Oggi poi sentiamo anche frasi del tipo la tecnologia porterà via i posti di lavoro, l'intelligenza artificiale vi lascerà tutti senza mangiare. Ma io faccio sempre questo esempio. Se 9 anni fa qualcuno fosse venuto da voi a dirvi che WhatsApp vi avrebbe fatto licenziare, col senno di poi oggi, e lo rincontrate, che gli dite? Questa è la tecnologia. Siamo in una fase di transizione digitale. Mio nonno aveva paura della televisione, veniva dalla radio. Papà aveva paura del computer, veniva dalla televisione. Noi abbiamo paura di questo che non conosciamo. Noi stiamo facendo questa tecnologia, non è per noi che siamo in questa sala, è per le generazioni che governeranno e gestiranno i nostri paesi. Noi siamo ancora attaccati a un periodo di talmente tanti cambi tecnologici che non abbiamo ancora capito in quale siamo, ma le nuove generazioni non si pongono il problema da dove viene la tecnologia, è come l'acqua, c'è. E quindi loro nascono con la necessità di utilizzare, tra virgolette, un'estensione tecnologica. Il metaverso è indipendente dall'hardware. Non è altro, il 6 e il 7 li metto insieme, non è altro che una rete, ma molto banalmente il metaverso non è altro che internet. Solo gli si sta cambiando nome. Oggi l'MSF ha stabilito un nuovo nominativo per internet, si chiamerà IDPA, Architettura Distribuita Predittiva Congiunta per Azioni. È noioso anche per noi che l'abbiamo scritto. Si chiamerà IDPA, quindi comincerete a sentire IDPA un po' dappertutto, perché in realtà il metaverso che cos'è? È l'insieme, è un sistema di tutte queste variabili, non è solo il mondo 3D, non è solo la realtà immersiva, è anche l'intelligenza artificiale, che intelligente non è. E se volete fare una prova molto semplice, accendete il vostro computer. Io incontro spesso nei convegni, nei comitati scientifici nei quali siamo presenti, dei fans sfegatati di ChatGPT. Cosa meravigliosa, eccezionale. Accendete il computer, entrate sul sito di ChatGPT e non fate nulla. Che fa? Nulla, perché non è intelligente. Ottavo, il metaverso non è vincolato ad alcuna valuta. Vi propongono un metaverso che vi obbliga a comprare Bitcoin, che vi obbliga a comprare qualsiasi qualcosa che finisce con coin. Ecco, da persona che proviene dall'Arma dei Carabinieri come i colleghi, vi dico, chiamate il 112 perché vi stanno fregando i soldi. Non è tecnologia, è un modo carino per farvi brillare gli occhi e per vendervi una criptovaluta che dopo una settimana probabilmente non esisterà più. Molto importante, ed è secondo me la sede perfetta questa per discutere dell'annullamento del digital divide, cioè la capacità sociale del Web 3, dell'IDPA o del metaverso, chiamatelo come vi piace di più in questa fase, di essere utilizzabile da chiunque. Non devo potermi permettere il computer da 2.000 euro per accedervi. Posso utilizzare anche un carton box da 3 euro che vendono in cartoleria. Ci infilo il mio vecchio S9 e sono nel metaverso. Quella è un'applicazione di realtà immersiva. Non devo essere obbligato a spendere 500 euro per un visore. Molti ci considerano un po' sognatori, chi fa il ricercatore pensa sempre al bene, non vediamo mai lo scopo utilitaristico delle ricerche e delle attività che noi facciamo. È stato così per Tim Berners-Lee quando ha creato ARPANET, la mamma di Internet. Non pensava che un giorno qualcuno avrebbe creato i cookies per mappare le persone. Aveva inventato qualcosa per scambiarsi un po' di informazioni tra colleghi del CERN. E andremo verso realtà quando qualcuno parla di interoperabilità, in realtà guardate che non è altro che l'evoluzione del link che mi porta da un sito all'altro sul sito, solo che la faccio semplicemente con la mia fisicità. La differenza, e la proverete, tra l'utilizzo delle applicazioni a realtà immersive e l'utilizzo di applicazioni di Web 2 è il fatto che io utilizzo il mio corpo per comandare l'applicazione. E l'applicazione mi riconosce. Se uno viene a casa vostra e voi lo conoscete, voi gli chiedete la carta d'identità, a meno che non siate in una caserma e quello viene a fare una denuncia, allora gliela chiedete. Ma normalmente è così. Perché io, che sono conosciuto dalla rete perché ho un avatar biometrico che mi identifica in maniera univoca e nessuno può toccare quella struttura di algoritmo, devo tutte le volte chiedere permesso a qualcuno per fare qualcosa che mi riguarda? Devo essere libero di andare dappertutto. Questi sono alcuni dati del laboratorio, ve li risparmio. Arriveremo nel mondo del Web 3. Oggi noi utilizziamo Zoom, Skype, Meet, Duo, che prima del Covid nessuno sapeva cos'era Zoom. Anzi, se vi avessero detto hai Zoom, qualcuno vi avrebbe detto ti consiglio uno psichiatra capace, perché nella realtà secondo me hai dei problemi. Che cos'è? Oggi se non hai Zoom sei un emarginato digitale. Domani mattina tutto questo scomparirà, perché noi utilizzeremo dei dispositivi ottici che esistono già in formato di occhiale, che ci porteremo a spasso durante la giornata, che già oggi ci permettono di telefonare, e passeremo in questo tipo di realtà. Quindi questo è il visore che la Fondazione nostra ha progettato e che ha presentato al Teatro Pirandello di Agrigento l'anno scorso, anche qua prima di Apple Pro. Sono dei semplici occhiali che voi indossate e che vi servono per entrare nella realtà immersiva. Questo per dire che ci aspettano 6 anni, il 2030 non è lontano, Il 2030 è molto vicino, arriva in un attimo e quindi dobbiamo insieme essere pronti per capire questa tecnologia e per imparare a utilizzarla nel modo migliore, ma soprattutto per imparare a farla da voi. Cercate di capire come funziona questo mondo e cercate di capire come potete gestirlo, perché se lo capite lo sapete utilizzare al meglio, lo saprete utilizzare al meglio e non sarete mai, tra virgolette, vittime di qualcuno che vi dice cosa dovete fare. Altrimenti ci ritroveremo in una condizione dove ci troviamo a Napoli a comportarci come sono abituati a fare a Oslo, che è un posto meraviglioso, però le abitudini sono diverse. Le applicazioni di Web 3 rispetto al Web 2 non sono applicazioni standardizzate, sono tutte applicazioni customizzate, non ce n'è una uguale all'altra. Ecco perché la parte principale di questa tecnologia è il fatto che l'uomo ritorna centrale all'interno della tecnologia e quindi questa è semplicemente una estensione della vostra capacità di poter agire. Non è qualche cosa che vi impone di cambiare il vostro modo di comportarsi. Ecco perché si usa il vostro corpo. E lo concludiamo con una frase che per noi, tra virgolette, è un po' un mantra, che è questa, perché ogni volta che abbiamo un'idea ci dicono che è pessima, però dopo 10 anni risulta che è quella che ha cambiato il mondo. Grazie, buona giornata.
Wow. I think a lot of food for thought for the next days, and I'm sure also there are many questions and comments, and so I think that we will leave sometimes after our 3 speakers also to have some answer. Okay, but now let's go on with the second topic of EDI, and faces the climate change. And we invited Brad Irwin to talk to us about this topic. And I think it's very important to, in these days, we will have many sessions about this topic, where we do not just talk about facing climate change, but reconnection with nature. So this is the real sense of our job, is to start really to rebuild a harmonious relation with human being and nature. And I remember a talk I had the opportunity to hear by Brad that really impressed me, where talking about the mission of the Natural History Museum, he really said how now the museum works to make activists, to make advocate for the climate change. So I invite Brad here to speak with us.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, EDI, for inviting me to talk to you this morning. So my name is Brad, and I work at the Natural History Museum in London. And I thought what I would do today is tell you a little bit of a story. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our history and how we came to our new strategy. I'm going to then tell you a bit about a year-long program that is the manifestation of that strategy, and then a very particular education initiative that we are really, really proud of at the museum in London. But let's begin by taking you right back to 1881, when the museum was established. And it was a really simple principle. It was there to have a collection of the natural world. It was there to do science on that collection, to understand the natural world. And it was there to inspire the public about the beauty and diversity of nature. Now, fast forward to 2020, And a couple of things have changed. The museum is now incredibly huge tourist attraction, reaching about 6 million people a year. The collection has grown to be quite large, with around 80 million objects covering every aspect of the natural world. But certainly in 2020, that initial premise to collect objects, to do science, and to inspire people was pretty much the same. So we really hadn't changed too much over that history. But guess what? This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody in this room. The world that we live in has massively and quite dramatically changed. So we are now living in what we are calling a planetary emergency. So climate breakdown, food degradation, the loss of species at a huge, huge rate. And for me, it was really telling the other day when the language shift from being in climate change or climate heating to climate boiling. The world around us has changed. So for us in the museum, we could no longer just sit on the sidelines and inspire people about nature. We decided to be much more active. So in 2020, we undertook a massive rethink as to who we are and what we do. So we now have a vision that is a future where people and planet thrive. That is a really different vision for us. Historically, our vision was to collect items from the natural world and to do science. But we wanted a vision that really situated us in the context of today. And it's a vision that loads of organizations share. We're not alone in that vision. It's quite, many other organizations have it. But equally, we wanted to change our mission to create advocates advocates for the planet. So no longer are we just trying to inspire people. We want to absolutely move them to become passionate advocates for our natural world. And for us, that felt like a very big strategic change. We were quite nervous in thinking that through, so we worked with a lot of external peer groups. We worked with a lot of our audiences, testing these ideas. And what was really interesting is when we tested this with our public, almost our sort of older public were very much, do not change, we love you, you're perfect, stay exactly as you are. But our younger audiences said to us, and this for us was really, really powerful, if you do not change, you are completely irrelevant to us. You are pointless. So for us, it was a real strong impetus to completely change who we are and what we do. So essentially what we're trying to do now is we are there to try and inspire, but to then help to inform people about what's going on in order to empower them to change. And for us, we have a really simple definition as to what an advocate is. So an advocate for the planet is someone who speaks up on behalf of nature and takes action to help create a future where people and planet thrive. So our actions will inform, inspire, and empower. So quite a simple change for us. Quite a significant change for us, but quite a simple message. And having been at the museum for over 10 years, I can't even remember previous visions or missions, but what this has done is unified every single person that works here. We know what we are there to do. It's to create advocates for the planet. So I want to now talk to you about a year-long program that is the manifestation of that strategy. And the best way for me to do that is to show you a really short video. So I hope this makes sense.
The global uprising in 2019 is the largest mass demonstration that's ever existed. Those were young people begging for us to join them to ensure that they will have a future.
Our Broken Planet, How We Got Here and Ways to Fix It, is a brand new program from the Natural History Museum that challenges our unsustainable relationship with the natural world. The program includes a free display at the museum in London, online content and events that dive into the solutions for people and planet, and off-site collaborations platforming the people at the heart of the planetary emergency. The free Our Broken Planet gallery at the museum in South Kensington comprises 3 sections that explore how humans have transformed the natural world: Eating the Earth, Nature for Sale, and the Climate Emergency.
Hello everyone.
Hello! Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, wherever in the world you might be watching from.
We are joined by Clover Hogan, researcher, activist, and founder of Force of Nature.
The adults in my life were so good at pretending that these issues didn't exist.
Brianna Fruin is a 22-year-old activist and environmental advocate for Samoa.
Stay away from thinking that we're at the end of something, because I believe that we are actually at the beginning of change.
Mitzi Jonaltan is a climate justice activist based in Metro Manila in the Philippines.
People aren't aware about climate change, about the climate crisis, about climate science, much less climate justice.
The Our Broken Planet programme doesn't end with the museum. We brought the programme to Glasgow for COP26, amplifying the voices and stories of those at the heart of the climate crisis.
The Nature Bar is a beautiful collaboration from the Natural History Museum. The programming that we are creating over the next 4 days should hopefully unlock the human elements of us that resonate with the natural world.
This is just the beginning, not just for the museum, but for the sector. We must continue to flip the script on how museums are engaging people on our broken planet. Our vision is for museums to become hubs of educating, connecting, and empowering young people to take action for people and the planet, now and into the future.
Thank you. So Our Broken Planet, it does a couple of things. It really puts the museum right in the heart of the conversation around the state of our planet. And the exhibition is very, very simple. It just uses specimens from the collection, chosen by one of our scientists, telling a story about a solution that helps to fix some of the challenges we have. And what we've done is, not just with that exhibition, but with the whole program across the year, is we're focusing on themes that make sense to us in our lives. So we're focusing on the food we eat, the materials we use, how we source energy, and also how climate is affecting our health. We're trying to bring in a range of audiences and a range of people, so we're working with scientists, consumers, policymakers, and activists. And essentially, this program can be seen in lots of different ways. So it's an exhibition, it's digitally focused, we've got physical events, we've got a podcast. It really uses every mechanism in the museum to push out that content. And the ways we're thinking about it are quite different for us. So we don't just want this to be a really interesting conversation in London. We want this to be both a UK conversation and, more importantly, a major global conversation. So one of the programs that I'm particularly proud of, and is perhaps one of the most joyful things I've done in my time at the museum, is a new educational initiative called Generation Hope. And essentially, Generation Hope is focused on creating an international community who can drive action, but at scale. And essentially, it brings together scientists, young change makers or activists, storytellers, artists, to connect with our audiences and each other. And essentially what it is, it's talks, workshops, training, networking, storytelling, and it's all focused around that critical age of 16 to 25 years old. And what we're trying to do with Generation Hope as a learning program is to help young people understand these complex issues. So we're helping them with our relevant science so that they can make better or informed decisions. We're trying to help young people communicate, so we're equipping them with skills and motivation to just engage with these really, really critical issues. And then for me, the third bit is really important. We just want to connect people. We just want to bring them together and help to create a community that can create change. So in order to create Generation Hope, for us, what was so important was to bring together an advisory group of some of the most impressive and influential young people you will ever come across. So here is the advisory group, and they run most of these programs for us. And it includes some of our scientists, but it includes activists such as Daphne Frias from the USA, or Selena, who lives in the Marshall Islands, a small Pacific island that is literally disappearing due to rising oceans, Larissa from Brazil, Eric from Kenya, Mitzi from the Philippines, and Disha from India. And for us, we needed to create a program that had this expertise at the heart of it and to work with them to co-curate this for other younger people. It's not about the big old famous museum swooping in. It really is about working together with these young activists to create change. So we launched this this year, and it all ended in a huge celebration event in the museum where we took over the whole museum and ran events, workshops, had performers there, really, really celebrating youth voices in the climate crisis. And I just want to share with you some evaluation, because for me this is really, really powerful. And we wanted to look at evaluation in a couple of ways. We wanted to understand the impact on all the young people who took part. We wanted to understand the impact on the activists and collaborators who are part of the program, but we also wanted to look at the impact it had on ourselves as an institution. So for our young audiences, they loved it. They lapped it up. They were super, super engaged. And you can see by some of those sort of scores from our quantitative surveys, they really, really engaged. It led to people wanting to change behavior, wanting to engage with others, and wanting to learn more. For our activists and collaborators, they absolutely, in our sort of post-interviews, the themes that came out were the fact that they were able to communicate and connect with one another was by far the most impactful thing for them. So whilst you think they might all know each other, they just didn't. So bringing them together, networking them, and creating that community was unbelievably powerful. And then for us as a museum, I think this is probably the thing I'm most proud of, is it's led to a real shift in how people perceive us. They don't just see us as the big old colonial museum in London. They're starting to see us as being relevant and progressive. Again, I think a lot of people were surprised we were doing this and really trying to be quite sort of aggressive in changing the conversation to push that narrative. And then for many of our scientists who participated, their reflections were really powerful. So one of our scientists said, Generation Hope has transformed how I feel about the museum's role. Rather than just lecturing, we're engaging and empowering young change makers, but in turn, we ourselves are being educated and inspired by them. It's really transformative action. So what's next for Generation Hope? Well, we're just being wildly ambitious. And for us, we don't want to stop. We want to grow this movement. So next year, we are repeating it. And we're going to be working with partners across the United Kingdom. So that movement doesn't just happen in London. It's going to happen all across the UK. We are fortunate enough to take Generation Hope to Dubai for COP28, which is the big upcoming climate conference. So we're going to be taking over one of their main stages and working with our change makers to, again, build that network. And the exhibition that I talked about, a partner of ours in Korea has taken it, so we're about to run Generation Hope with them in South Korea, so that, again, that network just grows and grows and grows. So for us, I think what we're trying to do is become a real agent of change, but absolutely empower young people to be the key voice that is part of that conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad. And I forgot to say which is your title in the Natural History Museum, and that I like a lot, so I will say now, because it is responsible for global engagement. And if you read the list of participants, you will find really incredible variety of definition of the roles of people that today are here. And I think also this is interesting to think about in these days. And another thing that is very important to say is how these three topics, we start with digital transformation and then responding to the climate crisis, are for sure closely linked, and they are absolutely interconnected also with the third topic, well-being and justice. If we do not consider them always altogether interconnected, no one of them will for sure be successful. So we can go to our last speaker, Peggy Brandon, that I'm pleased to invite here, and with a very short introduction about her incredible story and work. And I like, as we said with Michele Lanzinger and with the new ICOM definition, museums have a vital role in serving society by making art, culture, and a cultural heritage accessible for the public. But museums, however, have for too long welcomed only a very privileged audience, excluding many. Thankfully, artists, activists, and leading the way in addressing different forms of exclusion, such as racism, ableism, and classism in the arts. At the EDI Global Forum, we want to explore new ways for our institution to become more just and enjoyable for everyone. Peggy Brandon is an expert in the history of slavery and has extensive connection with both the communities involved and the cultural sector. And I will leave to her to tell her story also about a very new and exciting project she is leading. So I invite her to join us.
Hey, good morning. I see everybody fighting with the microphone. Let's see how I do. Okay. So, building a museum from the bottom up. That's what I'm going to talk about today. And here we are. Many of you speak Italian, so I will try to speak very slowly for the translators. I studied in Italy many, many years ago, but purtroppo, Italiano fluentemente, so I'm going to do it in English. I won't do that. Here we go. Heritage, Dutch slavery heritage. It's a big, big story. If you imagine that for almost 400 years, Dutch ships brought people from the African continent. Dutch ships went to the Indonesian region, to the Indian Ocean, and brought people all over the world. And it's not just the people that were brought from one space to the other. 600,000 doesn't seem a lot of people, but you should imagine these people lived for years and years, generations of generations. They were bred like they were cows. And so those 600,000 multiplied and became millions. And why I am one of those ancestors are in me, and I'm one of those people who came out of this whole global story. And what does it mean in the now? I think we should also talk about that. There are enduring effects of this period. And what you see is that people are trying to cope with this and become a more just society. So what we see, if you look around us, there's this, in our daily life, this constant influence of those days. In the Netherlands, everybody who visits Amsterdam goes to the Rijksmuseum. But you should realize that Rembrandt, who's this famous painter, would have been a very unknown person in a small village had it not been for all this wealth that came out of this slave trade. And all those people you see portrayed on his paintings are involved in that trade. At the same time, if I go to the islands, I see residue, remnants of warehouses. This block of stone you see on this one side was actually a warehouse for people. And at the same time, I look at that and I think it was built by black knowledge, by black hands, by black skills. There's many ways how we can look at history and reclaim it. The Dutch railroad was built with money that they took from Indonesia by suppressing people and putting them into slavery. So for me, if I walk around, I see all these remnants, but also these lines that connect the past to the future. It's the same here. It's not as if it was not in Italy or in Spain or in Portugal. And actually, Naples was a very big slave market. And there's now this initiative, which is called The Value of Man. And they're looking into who were these people who were traded here. If you look at this beautiful palace, the Caserta, it was built by enslaved people. And if you look at the way that we look at each other in paintings, this painting by Tizian of Lara Dianti with her black slave, her black servant, also means that there are images that are in my head and in your head and how we look at each other. And that's something a lot of people said in the Netherlands. We need a place where we can talk about this, about these images in our heads and how we change this. This is where we go to the start of this museum. In 2017, there were a group of people, predominantly from the Afro-Surinamese minorities, and they said, we want a place, we want a space. And the city of Amsterdam said, we're going to support this. Let's build a museum. And then you see that at that moment, it starts from a public initiative, and it remains that. The city starts to talk with people. How do you think this museum should be like? And this was the first start of this museum. There was political support from the city, and then there was national political support. So both, let's say, bodies, both political bodies from the city and on the national level decided to put money into the project. And this became the seed money, around $60 million, euros. And it's interesting to see that when this started, it remained what it was, something that came from people and people are engaged to talk about. Fast forward, 2020, 2021, there was an open call and people were asked to bring in plans to make a new museum. And it became a plan that was called With the Power of the Ancestors, those who were before us, those on whose shoulders we stand. And this is where we are now. That's when the next phase of the initiative started. If you look at the initial outcome of this first phase, this is what people said. We want to educate. We want to talk about our communal history. It's not only a black or white history, it's a global history, and it comes together in who we are. And we have to acknowledge the effects of slavery, what it did to our brains, how we look at each other. And so this became this idea for a museum for about, let's say 10,000 square meters. I was talking to a colleague from Finland who's going through the same process with public areas, but there were also more spiritual ideas. It needs to be along water, open water. That helps to cleanse, that makes us think about the people who were brought back and forth, but it also has this spiritual meaning. And so water will be important, but also we need space around it, a park. We need space inside for reflection. So what you get by talking to people is a different way of looking how museums can function. And then we said we want a vibrant museum with art, where you can make sounds, where you can eat, where you can smell food, where people can cook themselves. We need to make this a museum in a different way that's connected to the soul of people and not just to the narrative. And of course, it should be an iconic new building. Not because we want to spend money, but there is worth in making something new, in actually having these Asian, these brown, black bodies taking a spot in the city, putting their buttock down and saying, this is where we are, we belong here. So building a new space became very important for the communities that we were talking to. So my colleagues and I, John and David, we decided to just go and talk to people, more people. And over the last year, we talked to more than 5,000 persons. We went to the former colonies, we went to the US, and we went on a tour through the Netherlands, through 30 cities. Every week, we're in one or two places talking to people with one pivotal question: what would make this museum important for you? What do you need from this museum? What do you want to learn? What do you want to see? What do we tell about you? I've never been as tired as I am now in my life. I've never spoke to this many people, but it's very important to do it. So what do you get if you talk? You get stories. The new ICOM talks about narratives, and this is what we collected. We asked people in the street. We had sessions in town halls, in libraries. In the middle, you see me talking to this really gentle man in the island of St. Eustatius. And he calls himself a Congo man. And that's interesting, because during slavery, during enslavement, people were not allowed to have their own language. They were not allowed to have their own names. They were not allowed to live together. People from the same tribes were taken apart, because if you were together, you become dangerous. And what happened after the abolishment in 1863, people who used to come from Congo decided to go to live together. So in St. Eustatius, there's a couple of streets where people live together, and they call themselves the Congo men, and he's one of the last. And we were talking, he's 86, and I said, I'm from Suriname. And he said, oh, you have to wait, I will call my wife. She's also from Suriname. And I had to wait, and she came. And then we realized we sort of looked like each other. And she used to come as a child in the house of my grandmother, who I never met. So again, all these lives are interconnected, and that's what you get from talking to people. But young people have different questions. They say, we will come to the museum if you talk about before the white gaze. Slavery, nah. Who were we before we were enslaved? What's that history? What's their queerness? What's the culture? What's the religion? So we really feel that you cannot talk about slavery if you don't talk about freedom. I think that's something we also learned. The moment you're enslaved, you want to be free. So freedom is a much bigger story around this than talking about the enslavement. And then there's intergenerational stories, of course, in many ways. So this young man in the middle has a tattoo. Okay, who has a tattoo in this room? You see? There you go. Very global. But for him, he has a tattoo of a piece of lace. And the interesting thing is, his grandmother made this lace. And lace is actually a tradition from the southern Netherlands. And it was brought by the enslavers who lived in these plantations because they thought it was beautiful. And the enslaved people thought it was very special. And they decided to learn it themselves. So in Saba, you have this home industry. And his grandmother was really a remarkable good artisan. So he has on his arm a tattoo that's connected to a Dutch tradition that traveled through his grandmother, and that makes him proud. This is how we are connected, and for me it's fascinating to think about that. And this is a young woman. I will just give you a couple of the narratives that we collect when we talk to people. I was on Curacao on the island, and I saw her walking with a big backpack, and we were in a little truck, in a little van. And I said, why are you walking here? She said, I wanted to go to this museum, the Tula Museum, but it's closed. And I said, well, it's not closed for us. Jump in the van. And so I asked her the same question. We're making a museum. What would make you come to this museum? And she broke. This is like 1 second before she starts to cry. And of course, I was starting to cry as well. And she said, "My father left this island when he was 8, and he's now 70. I know nothing of his story. I'm here to try to learn something, and I would come to the museum to learn more. How do I find my heritage?" And a lot of this is very emotional, because it's emotional to think about things you don't know. And this is me talking to a Dutch professor. He's a brain professor. And he explained to me things about how things are logged in your brain, how we look at each other because of the messages we had from our parents and those before. How are we going to transform that? That's a bigger question. Why, if I look in the mirror, I would think, I wish I would look like an Italian woman, nice and slim with beautiful hair. It's something that's installed in me. But I can also see my own beauty if somebody tells me how to see that. And that's that part of transforming the ideas in your head. It's not easy, but we have to try. And of course, we talk to young kids. He's from my family. Otherwise, I wouldn't be allowed to show children anymore, but he's from my family. And we talk to children as well. We go throughout the Netherlands. We help teachers to talk about this history. And we use art as a way to come to terms with it. Children make poems, they make drawings, and they tell us what they think is important. And then if you talk about healing and reflection, artists can make such a difference. Also, by just thinking about rhythms that have been brought centuries ago and now are now part of songs that everybody sings. Who let the dogs out? Whoop, whoop. We all know it. It's based on these very old rhythms. It's good to understand how culture is transported in the now and how we all use it. Children. So, what do we gain if we talk to people? We gain ideas. I have, I think, 30 pages filled with these words that people say. I want to learn a language that's no longer used of my great-grandparents. I want to come cook in the museum. I want to map slavery in every city in the Netherlands. I want to see what things are like. And what we do, we try to gel all these hopes, these images, these narratives into bigger storylines. It's not easy, but it's really important. And it doesn't have to happen in one time. The museum can evolve and evolve and evolve, because what we need now could be very different in 5 or 10 years. Activism, music, personal narratives, formative workshops, identity, fashion, decolonizing the mind. It's amazing what people tell you if you sit down and ask them what they think is important. And so if I sort of gel it all together, people say, tell us the whole story. Tell us the real story. Tell us the history that we did not hear. But it also means the history of multiple cultures. It means fully and honestly, we don't know what the truth is, but we do know that history is usually written by those who are the suppressors, the oppressors, and not by what we call the survivors, but who could also be called the winners. So it's really interesting to look at what do we think is the whole story. At least it means you have to make it as broad as you can. But again, nobody has, let's say, the wisdom to know what the truth is. But we do know there's a need to see and hear more history from different viewpoints. So, what does it mean for a museum? Well, many things. Multi-layered, multi-perspective. It also means that you have to balance stories, because you cannot make one museum around a worldwide heritage. So you have to really try to balance stories and think what are more global ideas, like complex societies or time frames. So I try to make mental postcards of different locations at the same time. What should we do if we talk about people? Let's talk about their skills, about their knowledge. Let's talk about their culture. Let's not reduce them to just one thing, which is an enslaved person, a piece of product. We all are individuals, and I think there's no bigger gift to give to people who had no name and no history than to restore that. So I think that became very important in the talk with people. And I think the biggest thing that you can do as a museum, as my colleague talked about, is the transformation. How can you make people into actors for change? So one of the things, of course, technology. We can't go without it. If you want to make a museum a more personal experience for people, you have to give them the freedom to find their own information. And so all this stuff that we heard about, people want historical and personal narrative, chronological and theme-based, balanced, multi-perspective. And then, of course, you make a museum. We're starting now with the narrative. There's no objects yet, but people are starting to be willing to donate objects to us. And we're talking about loans with all sorts of other museums. But we want to make sure it's not looted. We don't want art that's taken away from people without them wanting it to be taken away. So there's all these perspectives. And of course, you want visitors to have their own digital experience, but it has to be more people, multiple people at the same time. Well, technology helps a lot. This is one of the things that they have in the Tate Modern, which at your fingertips, there's this information. More than 3,000 pieces of art. And you can just go and stand and touch. And this is how we envision people in the museum when it's open in 2029. It's a little far away. And the technology will be much more advanced then. But to think about this as a means to help people make their own visitor journey in a museum is really important. And I'm sure that you can help us on a later date. So this museum, it should inform, educate, activate, and transform. And the activation is really important, like we just heard. People have to make their own future, and we have to give them tools to do that. But we can also make a museum a much more open space. So in the plans that I'm now writing, I'm responsible as a curator for the whole plan, both financially as the museum outline. And in my idea, we need to have these spaces where young people make their own exhibitions. Every 4 or 5 months, have new small exhibitions that are made by the communities. That's how you bring activism into the museum, and it makes you an agent of change. And that's one of the things that we really want to do. That's it.
So, really, thank you. I think we choose to name this session Inspiring Session, and really, I think we couldn't choose a better way and other speakers to really start an inspiring starting for EDI. So really, really, thank you. I said before that maybe there are comments, answers, and so before going to the unconference, that will be a big space, informal space for going on in a comments and answering phase of our work. But I want just now to know if there are someone that want to make some question to our speakers. There is no one? So please.
Hi, good morning. No, I wanted to ask you one thing to the Natural History Museums of London, of course, and It really inspired me, but I also think about when we talk about activism, I mean, in this sector, I always hope we can say that also museum can be a real player in the activism, at least for the environment. I mean, also with disruptive action, also with something directly related to how to respond to a government, and I mean, more powerful and not only with also very important thing like talk and workshop and so on, which is very important. That I wish that there could be more of those also here, but of course there will be a lot more, but also something more strong. I don't know if the museums ever thought about this.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I should say that my museum is funded by the UK government, and so the role we can play is quite complicated. So we are not an activist institution. We have to, the way we think about it is we are a convening institution. So we can bring those voices in, but it is quite complicated. And when we started with this program, we had so many people say, you can't bring in activists, you can't do that, you can't criticize the government, you couldn't possibly say this about a funder. And so for us, I think what was really important is we've worked with activists who are incredible change makers. So we've worked really carefully with people who understand that we're a slightly complicated old institution. And we're really, really open about what we can and cannot do. So we make that quite clear to them. We are actually not allowed to criticize our government, but what we can do is show science about biodiversity in the UK, which is massively in decline. So it's a complicated line that we have to be careful around. But the one thing I've been so surprised by, impressed by, made emotional by, is those activists. If you call them change makers, they are the most articulate, they are the most smartest, compassionate people in the world. All they want are allies to help sort of combat the climate crisis. And so for me, actually bringing them in and working with them has been the most transformative thing that we can do, because they are helping us see things differently, but equally we're just helping them to have a platform to share their views and their voices. But it is a complicated line. So far, nothing has gone wrong, and I don't think anything will go wrong, but yeah, it's definitely a conversation that has been said a lot in our museum about how we work with them and what we do and et cetera, et cetera. But we work with them very closely and they understand what we can and cannot do.
Are there some more questions, please?
A question to Massimiliano Nicolini, and the question is, due to our heritage, our great heritage in technology, what we lack to provide this kind of solution to billion of people like the giants do. So what is the missing point that nowadays we have in providing solutions for a better education, better learning coming from museums to the global public? Because otherwise we speak about a great past, but no present.
Okay, in the meanwhile, I remember you to respond to the survey. You find here the QR code you can use to do it.
Allora, per quanto riguarda l'ambito prevalente dell'educazione, nella realtà parto da questo primo presupposto. La tecnologia può fare molto sia per quanto concerne la parte di educare all'utilizzo della tecnologia stessa, ma allo stesso tempo ci può permettere di poter essere uno strumento che dobbiamo imparare per educare anche il modo di convivere con la tecnologia. Mi spiego un pochettino meglio, magari mi allargo un po' rispetto a quella che è...
Sì, siamo stretti.
Ah, stretti, ok, ciao, strettissimo, ok. Allora, ricerca nel campo educativo ne è stata fatta molta per quanto riguarda la tecnologia. Questo tipo di tecnologia, per quanto riguarda questo aspetto, è estremamente molto più performante di quelle che sono le tecnologie in utilizzo ad oggi. Noi, che abbiamo anche al nostro interno un dipartimento di neuroscienze applicate, abbiamo riscontrato un miglioramento di quelle che possono essere le capacità, per esempio, di apprendimento a livello educativo dei giovani, anche perché la tecnologia della VRO ci permette sostanzialmente di catturare in modo maggiore quella che è l'attenzione anche del singolo discente. Calcolate che ci sono, diciamo, percorsi di formazione negli Stati Uniti, io cito sempre quello con Philip Kotler, che utilizza la tecnologia che abbiamo sviluppato noi perché permette di poter rendere nel modo migliore quello che è una rappresentazione reale di quanto viene poi trasferito ai discenti.
Thank you. Okay, please stand up also and come a little bit close to, okay.
Okay. Hi, my name is Costanza. Thank you, first of all, thank you very much for all these very interesting and inspiring talks. My name is Costanza, I'm a researcher at NYU, New York University. And I have a question for Peggy, actually. So you mentioned the political support. I guess you were mentioning funding, first of all, from the city and the state government. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about the political landscape you work in, because I can see that your work has a very strong political stance. And I guess part of what is possible anywhere, it's very much related to the political condition in which we operate, especially because this kind of project requires large funding. So this is kind of on the same line of the previous question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, of course, the big question. So, in a sense, when this project started, we had a more liberal political environment. In about a month ago, the political situation changed in the Netherlands. Luckily, this money, that's the seeding money for the museum, is fixed. But of course, if you look at the political landscape, there will always be believers and non-believers. But in general, we see that talking about the history of the population in the Netherlands as it is now is a fairly non-political issue. So I guess we're lucky in that sense. Does that help? Does it answer your question? Thank you. But again, if the political landscape changes, we will know that getting the annual money, the annual budget for this museum will be much more difficult. So what we're doing now is doing a lot of lobbying with the political parties, and we see that the majority is supporting this initiative still. So, yeah. But it's a lot of lobbying and a lot of work and a lot of drinking cups of coffee with people you don't necessarily like.
Hi, thank you. Fantastic presentations this morning. Another question for Peggy. I think actually the last answer you gave was probably the best one that sums up governance in museums. Lots of coffee with people that you don't necessarily share the same political views. Peggy, this is an amazing project that you're working on, and obviously a lot of emotional heft, as well as a very kind of transformative project. Your last point around a space in the museum for young voice and agency and empowerment. Can you say a little bit about how, over the next 6 years, you are going to develop that strand of the programme? Because that seems to be absolutely intrinsic to the project. Thank you.
Okay, let's make 2 questions so that it's easier to answer.
Yes, well, if you make a museum that's going to be finished in 6 or 7 years, of course, the museum has to start now. So yes, we started with temporary exhibitions and pop-ups, and we are engaging lots of young communities to help us make these programs. So actually the money that we have in the budget for the temporary programming, we're asking people young people to submit plans, what they would like to do with it. So we really try to keep the initiative as it started, as a public initiative. That also means you diffuse money to other groups. You don't spend it yourself all the time. And we also do this to the Caribbean islands, or with the Caribbean islands. So recently, last week, we had Lonnie Bunch, who's the director of the African American Museum in DC, and also the secretary of all the Smithsonians. He came to Amsterdam, and we asked the islands to submit at least one person, a young person, who was interested in museum work to come. And the ministry paid the bill, and we gave them a whole program, taking them to other museums, taking them to the Palace on the Dam. So again, if you start an initiative as a democratic process, you have to really try to keep it that, and that means involving people in the now and also diffusing the money that you have. That would be my answer.
Okay. Hello, my name is Brita from Bolzano. I work for the Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art. And I just wanted to add something to you, no? From London, I forgot your name, sorry. I was very thrilled from this project for the younger generation, and I already forward it to the National Museum of Bozen, which is small, it's not the same to London. But when you speak about the young generation as the generation of hope, I guess we just should be aware of the fact that they are engaged, they are motivated. A lot of them are activists as well, and I so much appreciate this workshop or this initiative you offer. But we also treat heavy topics in our exhibitions about future and hope and human conditions today. And when we had some reflections with high school students, several times it happened that they started to cry. And they said, "Are you crazy? Do you call us the generation of hope? We have to find the solution what you brought to this disaster." And it's not a critique, it's just to say, I think we never should forget that this can also be, only be a cross-generational process. We go, and your program is offering all these meetings. It's just, I wanted to share this with you, because I think it's a responsibility which is really, really heavy on the shoulders of the young generation. So just to share this with you, thank you.
Thank you, Brita. And I don't know if we have any more questions. Okay, last one. And then we have to go to our unconference.
Grazie. No, volevo fare una domanda sul metaverso, solo di chiarificazione tecnica, diciamo. Per quanto riguarda, lei ha parlato di app immortali che non hanno, come il metaverso, un bisogno di hardware, e che, se ho capito bene, cioè finché c'è un device collegato che ha accesso a questo sistema, continua a esistere, a funzionare. Cioè nel senso che ogni utente, ogni device connesso ne costituisce una parte, no? Un punto di accesso e quindi una parte costituente. In questo senso, ho capito bene?
Okay, to Mr. Nicolini. I'm interested about the possibility that biometric avatar will be also the solution for deepfake. Yes?
Allora, rispondo a entrambi. Allora, per quanto riguarda la prima parte della domanda, la risposta è sì, nel senso che noi lavoreremo su un'architettura distribuita e quindi ogni computer, ogni device del mondo concorrerà a far sì che, la possiamo esemplificare, tutti diveniamo parte di un unico grande server unificato dove ognuno di noi è una piccola parte. Poi nei tecnicismi l'architettura distribuita prevede anche degli algoritmi di distribuzione del dato. Allora, l'avatar biometrico è ad oggi, e l'MSF l'ha recepito come protocollo unico, il sistema di autenticazione più sicuro in assoluto esistente al mondo. Perché? Perché all'interno dell'avatar biometrico acquisisco 16 parametri biometrici dell'individuo: iridi, timbro vocale, i 4 aminoacidi che compongono il nostro DNA, la frequenza del battito cardiaco, le impronte digitali e la forma del padiglione auricolare. Questi dati vengono matchati ogni 0,3 secondi e ogni dato è protetto da una chiave crittografica AES a 256 bit. Per capirci, è la tecnologia licenziata dal Pentagono americano per la classificazione dei documenti super segreti. Per far sì che un'applicazione in Web3 funzioni con l'HBA, noi dobbiamo essere realmente presenti di fronte alla macchina in quel momento. Questo significa che non esisteranno più gli haters che si nascondono dietro una tastiera, non esisteranno più pedofili che si fingono bambini per andare ad aggredire bambini, non esisteranno più coloro che possono fare phishing sui nostri dati, non ci sarà più la possibilità di anonimizzare il comportamento in rete di qualcuno. 15 giorni fa un ragazzo si è tolto la vita perché è vessato su TikTok, non si scoprirà mai il colpevole probabilmente. E soprattutto la parte del deepfake scompare perché non ha la capacità di analizzare il dato biometrico. Quindi da questo punto di vista è per quello che il cambiamento in questi 6 anni è sostanzialmente stravolgente dal punto di vista dell'accesso. Per quanto riguarda l'uso resterà quello di prima, con la differenza che se farò un commento negativo su qualcuno sarà identificato che quel commento l'ho fatto io.
Ok, grazie. Un'ultimissima cosa, anche se lei ha già risposto dicendo che avete un dipartimento di neuroscienze, quanto è importante lo studio dell'embodiment, visto che ci avviamo verso questo tipo di tecnologie in cui il nostro corpo è parte integrante dell'esperienza?
Per quanto riguarda la nostra specialità, ovvero la realtà immersiva, è importante tanto quanto avere internet per poter mandare un'email.
Ok, grazie. Grazie, perfetto.